Good evening. Make sure this is working. Can you hear me? Okay. It's now 6:30. We're going to call the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, November 11th to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Here.
Alderman Telako. Alderman Meyer. Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Alderman Bach.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Bratt.
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Here.
And Mayor Nervin.
Here. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes for October 14th.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, please, if you're in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, minutes are approved. Next up, we have one of our two discussion items. The first is a presentation of the joint Mequon-Thiensville Bike and Pedestrian Way Commission's prioritization of projects contained within the 2025 to 2045 Mequon-Thiensville Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. I think Cole is going to walk us through that quickly.
Yeah, I will turn it over right away, actually, to a couple of our Bikeway Commission members, Ken Masiolik and Jim Dornick.
Okay, thank you, Cole. Good evening. I'm here tonight to represent the Mequon-Thiensville Joint Bike and Pedestrian Way Commission, along with Ken Maciolek to my left here. Just to start out with a little bit on the makeup of the committee, there are 7 members, 3 from Thiensville and 4 from Mequon. The 3 Thiensville members, Ron Hollyoak, Ron Heinritz, who is with us here tonight, and new member Clint Sergi, who is also with us. The Mequon members are Ken, who is the chairman, myself, vice chairman, Kristen Wade, and Alderman Bach, who I'm happy to have on the committee. So just a little bit about the committee, and I will hand this off to Ken. Next slide. Thank you, Cole. All right. First thing, mission of the mission statement of our commission is 3 primary items. Number 1, we're to advise both the Mequon Common Council and the Thiensville Village Board regarding creation, revisions, and implementation of a city and village-wide master plan for bikes and pedestrians throughout both communities. Second item, once that plan is in place, we're to set priorities for new bike and pedestrian ways or enhancements of existing routes that are in the plan. And third, which Ken will talk about a little bit more tonight, we are to identify and prioritize critical gaps in the bike and pedestrian ways. So next slide, please. A little bit on the master plan and the timeline. Back in March of 2024, it was decided that we really needed to update the existing plan. And so we started out with the process of selecting a consultant for this portion. It was felt that we just did not have the resources within our committee necessary to do everything. So in March 2024, we started the selection process, interviewed several different contractors who submitted plans. Grafe was selected as the choice to develop the plan in June of 2024. They completed the plan in February of 2025, and the plan was approved and adopted by you, the Common Council, on March 11th of this year. So next slide. One more thing, a little bit more on the more detail on the master plan. There has been a plan in existence for quite a while that was developed by the commission only, and it was dated 2010 to 2030. As I said, it was decided that updates were needed and we needed help on it. That's how we got going with Grafe. And the plan, as obviously stated, the attempt was to update the previous plan, which badly needed updating because the conditions had changed and some of the priorities had changed, and we really needed an update for the next 20 years. So that's the overview of the plan. And with that, I believe we are moving right along to the gentleman to my left here.
Okay. one slide early. I'm Ken Masiolik. My voice is a little raspy. I apologize. The
Maybe
GRAFE
pull the
report,
microphone closer.
GRAFE report includes 40 recommendations, over 40. We narrowed it down to 20 to start with because it was just too massive to try and to deal with 40 separate recommendations. It includes both communities, Thiensville and Mequon. We've identified them separately. And the 20 that we've identified are in your packet. I'm just going to go through the short-term ones. First issue is the toughest part was deciding what factors we use to make a decision as to what the priority should be. And I kind of gelled it down to these. Safety being the primary consideration on any recommendation. There's varying degrees of safety, obviously, and some of them are more immediate, and I think we've tried to address that. Improve corridors. The GRAFE plan talks about corridors, which are basically the major roads that crisscross our city and Thiensville, Port Washington Road, north-south, Mequon Road, east-west, the main corridors. All of those contain gaps that don't have sufficient bicycle facilities to make riding safe. So we looked at opportunities to improve corridors. Now, we do have one major corridor that is completely safe, and that is the OIT, the Ozaki Interurban Trail, which is a north-south corridor that is a gem of our system. Public input was given in the form of a survey. It's contained in the GRAFE report. We considered that. Timing with planned roadway improvement. This has turned out to be a fairly important one for us because some things have happened relatively quickly and we've been able to address them. And a term that we used a lot was low-hanging fruit. One of the big complaints about the previous master plan was there was a lot of real lofty goals, practically none of which were met. We don't want that to happen this time around, and we want to present to you for your consideration priorities that are doable and have an immediate effect where possible. So next slide. And these are the top 7 that we came in. They're not in any particular order. The numbers are just for identification. The first 2 I would consider, we would categorize as low-hanging fruit. And they are intended to act as a supplement to a more major corridor. Mequon Road being a major corridor, for example, is really does not have any bike facilities that are safe at this point. I mean, it has sidewalks, which we think will certainly help the pedestrian travel, but for bicycling, it is just not a safe, and it may be years before we have the opportunity to do something to add a bike lane or a side path or something of that nature. But GRAFE came up with a recommendation that we have a safe bike route from the western side of Mequon to the OIT, the Ozaki Interurban Trail. And that route is contained in the plan. I won't go through it. We've made some changes to it. But it's low-hanging fruit because it involves signage, basically, to direct people through subdivisions, crossing Mequon, and then crossing Wauwatosa Road, ultimately ending up at Division Road in the OIT. And it's low cost, it's signage, basically. Same thing for Thiensville has a route on Riverview Road, which we've recommended, and GRAFE has recommended, which would take people who avoid travel on Freistadt Road, which is one of their least safe roads in the community. The next 2, 3, and 4 are recommendations that we make because of planned roadway construction which is going on. First being Lakeshore Drive, which we're going to address separate from this, but it was clearly an opportunity to address a problem of bicycle travel and pedestrian travel on Lakeshore Drive. And Cole is going to take charge of going through that for us, but we have approved, we approved that recommendation for a 5-foot shoulder. The commission did so at its last meeting. Wauwatosa Road is kind of an interesting story. The commission did not have much involvement in the planning of that. We didn't know it was even going on until an article appeared in the news graphic seeking public comment. And we called the project engineer and told him we have a master plan that has a specific recommendation of a buffered bike lane on Wauwatosa Road from County Line to Mequon Road. We sent it to him and it was accepted, and ultimately it's going to go through. It's a perfect example of where you get in early on a planned roadway improvement, we can do something and have something happen. And I think that's what we're certainly going to be looking for going forward. Number 5 is a safety issue, and that affects both pedestrians and bicyclists, and that's on the sidewalk crossing the Milwaukee River Bridge on Mequon. We have not had any reported accidents there. I'm sure somebody has fallen off the edge because I've come close myself a couple times. There's not a lot. The engineering has told us that this is obviously a state highway, very concerned about their bridges. They don't like changing them or changing them. We're looking at maybe some signage that advises people to go single file, maybe some paint on the sidewalk itself to identify that there's a drop-off. Grafe has a recommendation for some road improvements. We understand that that's not going to happen quickly or easily, and this may be an opportunity to at least make it safe for pedestrians and cyclists, or safer, obviously. The last one, number 7, is a sidewalk on Bunch Rock Road. The sidewalk right now ends just past the police station, and there's a lot of concern about people walking on that very narrow road. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the most important one. So Bunch Rock sidewalk was also listed. I'm sorry, back to 6. A lot of comment about the fact that we've got that decrepit path running along Range Line Road from Mequon to Donges Bay, and what can we do about it? It clearly needs to be replaced. The question is, what was it replaced with, and how do we do it? And there was a lot of comment. We received some comment from some of the aldermen as well, indicating, can we find a way to get safe access? There's 3 schools on there, Lumen Christi, Lakeshore Middle School, and Donges Bay in that area, which we could potentially provide a safe access to by including a side path on Range Line and making improvements on Donges Bay. What we came up with was this opportunity for a TAP grant, and there's a special program under the TAP grant being Federal Transportation Alternatives. Safe route to school, and it has a higher priority in approval. We managed to get a filing in, and I really thank Cole and Jeremy Dandy who put it together at the end of the last month. And we submitted for a grant for an engineering study of this to determine what would be the best way to connect those schools and provide possible sidewalk or side path connection from Mequon Road to Donges Bay and an entrance into the school. And Cole, if I'm correct, you have sought that engineering study to cover Donges Bay from Range Line east to Port Washington, with the thought that a lot of kids come from that direction and would need some help with roads to get to school safely. So that's where we are on the top ones. They're considered short-term projects because we're looking at trying to get them started or completed within this 3-year period of time. I've already exceeded my 5 minutes. I apologize. And we certainly welcome questions from the council.
All right, we'll open it up for questions from council. Alderman Bach.
Just some comments. I mean, since I've been on this with this group this year, and I'm thrilled that there's so much interest in this topic. He mentioned my two alders to the left sent a message around. We've got some good community interest in this, and when the council was asked to approve the GRAFE study, I remember making some comments that I was worried that this was just going to be another report that would end up in a file and nothing would happen. And so I am grateful to the commission for responding to the challenge by putting together this draft priority plan. And so in my short time on there, I've been impressed with their thoughtful work. And we've all seen this. I mean, in the last month in my neighborhood, and I'm kind of near, I live near the Highland House, so that's where kind of the fifth district. I've seen a bunch of different things. I've seen joggers and bikers on Highland navigating cars, zipping at 45 miles an hour. I've seen Newcastle residents trying to cross Port Road to walk into residential neighborhoods just to walk. I've seen Concordia students walking south on Port Road because the sidewalk doesn't start until approximately Glen Oaks. I saw last week a middle school student probably coming from school heading east on a scooter on Mequon Road and Mequon and Port, probably trying to get over to the Lakeshore area. Very, very, very dangerous. I received a request from a resident between the river and the kind of the Highland House asking if we could add gravel to the shoulder of Highland so she could ride her bike with her first grader to get to Oriole Lane School. I mean, you can see all the different dangers in these particular areas in our city. And I remember looking at a report called People for Bikes, and Shorewood and Whitefish Bay are in the top 10 best cities for bicyclists in Wisconsin. Now, obviously, Mequon has a totally different culture than those two communities, but we certainly should work to make roads identified in the study safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And I think our recent community survey results confirm that the citizens agree. So we don't get a lot of opportunities on these roads, right? I mean, when they are replaced, we have to wait another 35, 40 years to make something happen. So I appreciate the commission for their good work and look forward to a good discussion.
Echoing that, I did recently check in with some folks I know at WISDOT regarding Mequon Road because it's our only major east-west for the lower half of the city. And you're right, you'd have to be a little crazy to bike on Mequon Road. I've done it once, I'll never do it again. It's a little nerve-wracking. As many know, they're planning to repave Mequon Road from Cedarburg Road to Port Washington in the very near future, and that means we're not going to get a full reconstruction to make bike facilities possible. But they did note that in their eyes, the road is in about the last 10 years of its useful life. And this one last repaving will be the last major activity before they do eventual reconstruction in a decade or so. Maybe if it's 15 years, if you're on WISDOT time. So I was disappointed that we wouldn't be able to have something done there, but that's the time frame and the cycle that WISDOT is on for Mequon Road. Just to fill in some of the blanks from what was provided earlier. Any other comments from anyone, any of the aldermen? Alderman Strelchak.
As you know, my latest topic has been the pool, but this was one of my passionate conversational topics as well. I want to highlight kind of an issue, and a disconnect. I'm really happy to see you guys here tonight, so thank you for coming and presenting. And thank you for being engaged, and thank you for the work that you put in and the volunteer time that you guys spend, supporting our community and trying to make it an active and safe place for, residents of all ages. My issue, and I served on, this committee for a year because I wanted to get engaged and understand kind of where it was there was a pretty hefty disconnect between this committee and council. There was a pretty hefty disconnect between this committee and council's policy. Highlighting examples of, where we have a mission to make a bike safe city, but then we take up on an individual road basis, do we want to shoulder it for bike lanes or not? I think some of what this master plan should do, and I would invite maybe the committee to kind of share some feedback with us and us to formally review it, is to come up with standards in which we add bike lanes to roads of a certain category as a standard moving forward, and then we have to have a reason to deviate. If it harms, a significant amount of specimen trees, or just really isn't feasible, or, some of those other issues. Because the policy really to move the needle forward for what you gentlemen and ladies on the committee are trying to accomplish is, a safe infrastructure and roadway, partnered with signage and then additional things. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, just to respond to that, one point I missed making was the fact that we did get the Gray folks to do this study meant that they added an element of objectivity, and it was data driven. There are state and federal standards that are quite precise, and they're based on traffic volume and traffic speed, and depending on what that combination is, you get a recommendation for anything from nothing all the way up to bike lanes, and then the next step would be buffered bike lanes, and then the next step would be off-road, and there are definite widths, et cetera, applied to all of those. So I think I'm responding to what you said has been missing. Thank you.
There's a grid contained in the master plan to identify what bike facility is appropriate for a given road with
Yes.
speeds and.
So you guys have done the work and you agree to it, but us up here,
I mean,
we
we'd be
need to do
happy
the
to-
work and agree to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sharing that the work that you've done and the document that you have in your hands, we should really kind of formally go through some policy items here, line by line. What do we want to adopt as a city standard policy moving forward to actually move the needle on this, so that each project isn't an uphill battle or a challenge, in each phase. So just kind of a gentleman's ask and a calling myself out in the fact that, I feel like we advocate for these, on a one-by-one basis versus a broader sweeping opportunity for the city. I know that there's several residents here, and we'll speak on that topic next, regarding Lakeshore Drive, and that off-the-road path is a concern. I fielded a call from a gentleman today. That policy, kind of discussion here would be a really good one to have and understand where we want it and why we want it, and really what we want to see from resident feedback, and do they want it and do they need it, to kind of tie out with everything else. So that's just some commentary based on the study and policy moving forward. Again, circling back, I see a list of things here. I agree with most of them. Some I've got kind of some further questions that I can circle back with you guys on. I think there might be some better opportunity. I've been an avid cyclist for years. I'm going to be back out on the roads. I got a fat bike, so you'll see me riding around, and I'll have feedback on any road you want me to give it to you on, except for riding down Mequon Road, because I'm not going to get killed.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
And I agree with the bridge, coming from the high school. I did drop off, and I saw the kids cruising on their scooters going over there, and people trying to walk, and the runners coming through. And, there's some challenges that you guys are definitely working on. So again, thank you for all the hard work.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other feedback on the prioritization of the items in the report? Alderwoman Talaco.
All right, thank you. I like that you guys came to us and have a pretty feasible list of easy things, especially with signage. I don't think that's asking too much, and I think that's something that us as a council could definitely get moving forward. So I super appreciate that. I was just looking back at my emails I had back in January when this was presented, and I kind of had given Cole some of my feedback, and I was just going to kind of share it with the council quickly. And I think the biggest deterrent of this whole bike study, it was too much, it's too big. Where do we start? How do we get this money? And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I was like, all right, well, let's think about this. And I think that I had proposed that we do like proposed hubs. So you guys brought up how the interurban trail is kind of like a gold mine. It's a gold mine for many reasons in Mequon, right? It's well done, it's safe, it's drawing people to the town center. And it's like, instead of trying to piecework everywhere, I think we need to really focus on a few areas and start to build off of those. One of the areas that I had brought up or identified was definitely around the school zones. And I think that's where we need to spend time, money, and a lot of effort, because I think that that's one of our hubs where we want to get kids to school safe. I know that we have a lot of recreational bikers, and my concern is not building this beautiful path so that, you know, whenever you're off work, you can go bike the city. I want to build bike paths around the community and the communities within our city so that those are getting used first before we try and start building so big. And I think we're kind of like outstepping in a way, and we need to focus on specific areas and build that before we start trying to build this. You know, Mequon's just too large, and it's just, the price tag's too big for us to be able to do that. So I think building off of what we already have and our school zones and kind of making those hubs would be a good foot forward. And then taking into consideration this list, especially with signage. Mequon Road is a huge issue right by the bridge. I agree. We need to act on that. That's not something I want to see us dismiss for the next 3-4 years. That's something I'd like to see getting going this upcoming year. So thank you, gentlemen. Good work, and let's move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. Nice comments, Alderwoman Talaco. Welcome to our consultant from Grave. Look forward to hearing some of what you have to say in a little bit. Thank you so much to this Bike and Pedestrian Committee. You have months and months of hard work into this, and we greatly appreciate it. This is a sounding board. The purpose of this agenda item is to accept the prioritization. So I guess I wanted to echo that I am supportive of the top 7 items on this list. You've heard us talk about item number 5, the bridge over the river. We brought this up repeatedly in previous meetings. The DOT keeps shutting us down. I think we should just go paint metallic paint on the lip of the edge, and I would be shocked if they said anything. I love the idea of some signage, single file only. Let's just do something. And the DOT is absurd for pushing back on really basic things. You know, like the little bollards that can get knocked over. How is that a problem to put up right now? So anyways, item 5 upsets me. I think we should resubmit our, now that we have this wonderful report, I think we need to resubmit the study back by Grave along with the committee's top 7 prioritizations to the DOT and possibly our legislators, and ask, why is it so hard to get some paint on the bridge and a couple of signs? Item number 18, I know we're not covering that. There's a topic about a bridge, a pedestrian bridge over the Milwaukee River. I would need way more information about that to say. I just want to make sure that when we accept this list tonight, we're not all saying, yeah, we agree with all 18 items on this list, because I would need way more information on that. And so what I really wanted to talk about, especially for those in the public who didn't receive a copy of the memo, I had the privilege of working on a memorandum with Alderman Bratt relating to item number 6 for the schools, Rangeline Road, Dundas Bay Road. I'm not going to read the memo, but I did just want to cover the crux of the memo, just to kind of read into the record our deep concern for the current configuration and, as we said, our policies. So I'm happy to send anyone a copy of the memo, or you can request it from staff. But essentially, the memo basically identifies that we serve 3 schools, Mequon, Thiensville Rec Department, major bus routes, and 25% of Mequon's residents on the Rangeline Road and Dundas Bay corridor. So again, that's 25% of the population. Both roads have no continuous sidewalks, narrow shoulders, very high traffic, and unsafe school crossings. There are none. From 2020 through 2025, the police department was able to provide Alderman Brad and I a record of 29 injury-related crashes in this corridor, with, of course, many more unreported. My son actually fell. He was on the bike path by the golf course, and it's so uneven there, he fell, thankfully, into the golf course and not into the road. I mean, that happens every single day. and it's just unacceptable. The 760-foot sidewalk on Range Line Road is decrepit. It's in front of the cemetery. It's flood prone. It's uneven. It forces pedestrians like the cemetery goers literally into traffic. They're walking around in an intersection. The traffic volumes in front of Donjas Bay Elementary, there's 4,800 cars a day going in front of this school. There's 3,300 cars going in front of Range Line Road every day. And of course, Mequon Road, there's 28,000 cars, but the concern is all the children and pedestrians trying to get from Lumen Christi on the bike system. In 2024, there was a no left turn restriction that was put into the road. We had major congestion around Donjas Bay Road, but new backups were created with our solution. There's extremely unsafe driver behavior. You have cars and pedestrians driving off the curb, like literally on the shoulder. You have cars driving over the center line to bypass pickup lines. It's the Wild West. Stop over any day between 3:50 and 4. Wild West. Our memo recommends redesigning the roadway approaches, the crossings, the access points using modern technology in coordination with MTSD. We are proposing a phased implementation of our plan between now and 2028. The grant applications, thank you to Mr. Cole and staff for submitting this TAP grant. Council should know that this is a multiple page application. It went in end of October. And as a result, if we are awarded this grant, it theoretically could pay for the entire study. So like, for example, we just spent $150,000 plus on this Lakeshore Drive study. This TAP grant might actually pay for all that for the corridor that we're talking about. So candidly, I'm not assuming that these projects are one or the other. I think when we're talking about a cohesive policy, it's like, what is next? We have this list of items and there is not enough money to do it all. So if someone were to say that, and I guess this is more of a test for council, that if it's one or the other, that you're not going to be willing to spend, I'm sure, based on this figures, I'm sure it will be in excess of $5 million. If you're not willing to spend that money when we come back a few years from now, or a year or two from now, when we're ready, I'd rather know that now so we could like make our choice. Because as Alderwoman Talaco said, the schools are way more important. So the staff will bring up, the timing of the road program. That's a separate conversation. I understand the roads aren't going to be replaced tomorrow or next year or the year after. But what we're talking about is an acceleration of the road replacement program for this corridor. Because as you heard, there's accidents almost every day. There was 2 bus accidents over the last 2 weeks. The buses are hitting each other. They're hitting cars. Some guy on a bike walking his dog. It is very, this is what happens when there's a lot of development. You get everyone in a small area and it's very unsafe. So next month, just to simplify what we're asking for, back to the memo, next month, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a resolution that staff will need from council saying that the council supports the TAP grant application that was submitted. And that is simply what we are asking for, is that this item could be on next month's agenda, please.
It is.
Good. For a resolution that council could accept this resolution to go in for the TAP grant and get that process going. The memo outlined many other things, including a community process. Kudos to the Bike Pedestrian Committee and staff. The public input that you guys got, I think it was great. And the surveying, and you put a lot of work into that. And so we'd like to do a similar process for our corridor and make sure everyone is heard, including the school district, who is a very big stakeholder. So again, I'm assuming we're not being told to choose between projects. If we are, I think you can probably tell where I would lean. And I'd really appreciate it if council could speak up about that. But if we're not, and we're committed to this bike plan and doing it over time, and I think this list is great. So I don't know if Alderman Brett has any other comments. I'm just really happy to get this on the agenda finally. We've been working on this for years, and this is extremely important. So.
Alderman Bratt.
Thank you, Alderman Parrish. I also want to thank the folks who have been involved with the Joint Bike and Pedestrian Way Committee. This is not something that is work done lightly. You know, this requires time and commitment and a lot of passion. So I really don't have much more to add to what Alderman Parrish is saying. He said it well and eloquently. But I see that, you know, I drive down Dodgers Bay Road and Highland pretty regularly, drop my kid off at Orchestra 7:30, and, you know, I see teachers walking to school on that road. I see people of all ages. And everyone, you know, I'm always just waiting for an accident report. And we can say that about a lot of roads in Mequon, but I think with Alderman Talako was saying, you know, our school zones are one that we really should lift up. The infrastructure there in place. We're not going to not have students. Those locations will be there for a while. So I think this is a real ample opportunity for the Common Council to think long and hard about our priorities for the next generation as we plan today. Thank you.
Any other feedback from any council member on the prioritization of the bike and pedestrian plan? Okay, I think we're just accepting the prioritization. Do we need a formal vote on this?
No,
Just a
no
discussion
vote.
item?
Just purely a discussion item and presentation.
Okay, so we're going to transition now to a complementary item that focuses on one of the items that was on the top 7, review and consideration of the design alternatives for the reconstruction of Lakeshore Drive, south of Mequon Road and Mequon Road east of I-43.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Sorry to put you guys through 2 bike ped subjects in a row, but this project we've been working on is Lakeshore Drive, Mequon Road east of I-43. Just quickly going to go through, I'll give a background of the project and what we've done so far. Brad is here from R.A. Smith today, who's been helping us put together some alternatives for the project based on the bikeway plan we just sort of discussed. And then I'll kind of talk about the public input we've received so far, and then we can break into discussion on it. And really what we're looking for as staff today is just some sort of direction on how to proceed with the projects, whether it's one of the alternatives we have presented in our concepts here or else, and hoping to move forward with the project. So the project background, have it up on the screen here. Project limits, Mequon Road, Lakeshore, north of Zedler. This segment has been on our 5-year plan for road repaving for quite some time, just based on condition. So as we're transitioning from having our bikeway master plan, which we adopted here, we're using that to guide the improvements moving forward and trying to assess the feasibility and costs of those going into this project, since we're going to be redoing the road. Due to the scale of this project area, it's about 2.25 miles. We're proposing to break that into 2 different phases, which we have laid out on the screen here. And then, as I discussed, the bikeway master plan recommendations, there's really one recommendation for this and then a consideration for another recommendation along this segment. So I have the project limits highlighted in yellow here. The main recommendation is to widen the paved shoulders to 5 foot total. So that's the area outside of the white line when you're driving on your right side. So widen that to 5 feet. And then the additional consideration is for the 8-foot side path, basically an 8-foot off-road asphalt path on the east side of Lakeshore Drive. And that limit is only part of the limits of our project. That's outlined in blue on the screen here. So just extend from Dodgers Bay north around the corner on the north side of Mequon Road to where Lakeshore Drive continues north. So we used these alternatives from our master plan to inform us for an RFP to proceed with looking at some concepts and looking at the feasibility and costs, as I mentioned. I will now turn it over to Brett Harches from R.A. Smith, who's been helping us go through just what I said about the feasibility and cost of the project and forming these recommendations into 3 different alternatives.
Right, so after that RFP, we were contracted with the city to look at the 3 alternatives for Lakeshore Drive and Mequon Road. Alternative 1, these are not in any particular order, just how it happened to be. Alternative 1 is to reconstruct the roadway and widen with 5-foot paved shoulders on each side and an 8-foot side path on the east side from Donjas North and then over to Lakeshore Drive where it goes north. Alternative 2 is the roadway reconstruction with 5-foot paved shoulders without the side path. And alternative 3 is just a roadway reconstruction with no widening. Those are the 3 that we did some plans, some concept level plans at this point, and some costs for those. They are on the city webpage. They can be seen, the layout of the plans. It indicates impacts for all of the different alternatives for the 2.25 mile length of the road. And the costs are involved there, concept level costs, and with the roadway sections as well included on there. So the impacts are what we compared between the 3 different alternatives. The first one, which includes the widening, if you remember, and the side path, obviously that's going to be the most impactful to the trees and vegetation in the right-of-way. Any decorative features that are within the right-of-way are impacted by that one. They're most impactful. Moderate impacts in alternative 2 because you're still widening. So the widening, what it does is it pushes everything on either side 5 feet away from the roadway, and that gets into the ditch. And so the ditch, you still need drainage. So the widening impact alone, it pushes the ditches over, and that results in impacting in some trees and things that are in the right of way. So those are impacts, but it doesn't have the same impacts, obviously, as the alternative 1, which also includes that path. And then alternative 3 has pretty minimal impacts because the roadway isn't widened at all. But we are going to be doing some regrading of the ditches because there's some drainage that we want to improve while we're doing the roadway for alternative 3. That would even include some drainage improvements to the ditches. And here's a little summary. We went through the 2.25 miles and we did a tree survey and we did a topographic survey so we knew what was out there. We put the 3 alternatives on top of that topo, and then we could tell what would be required to be impacted for each alternative. And you can see the tree impacts within the right-of-way. All the work we did was within the right-of-way. I want to make a note of that. We didn't plan at this concept level stage to need to push anything outside of the right-of-way. So everything is within there. And these are all the trees. These are more than just specimen trees that are impacted within the right-of-way. You can see a substantial number in alternative 1, reduced by over 100 in alternative 2, and very minimal tree impacts in alternative 3. Site feature impacts are any type of fences or columns or lights that are within the right-of-way that are impacted along the 2.25 mile route. You can see there's a significant number of them in alternative 1 and in alternative 2, and drastically reduced in alternative 3. So the roadway cross section, for those some of you know and have seen cross sections and can read it, I'll try to walk you through it. On the top of the 2 there, those are cross sections if they're cut through the roadway. The top one is what it is existing. And you can see there's a width right there of the existing pavement, which is kind of this thin, dark line on the top of the section. You can see dimensions up there. You can't read them. They're not really important for the purpose of this discussion. So that's what the long lines are. Those are dimensions. The actual roadway is, and maybe Cole can kind of trace along where that is. Right there, that's the pavement right there. And so you can see the width of the existing pavement. And if you drop down to the bottom one, that's the widened section. So it's considerably wider. You can see it pushes everything into the ditch and it pushes the ditches out, and it causes us to regrade all the ditches within the right-of-way. And then it shows the bike path on the east and north side there, and the impacts extend all the way to the right-of-way limits. That is alternative 1 right there with the ditches. The next slide, I think, shows the same thing. The little change between them was that there would be some ditch enclosures required. If there's not enough room to fit a ditch between the roadway widening and the bike path, and to get drainage to work properly, we will enclose it with a pipe underground to allow the runoff to continue to drain where it needs to go. So that's still alternative 1 with the bike path, just showing that there's some difference between if we have a ditch or if we don't. And then the next slide shows alternative 2, which is the same exact widening of the roadway. Keep that in mind. We're reconstructing the road and widening 5 feet. In alternative 2, we just don't have the bike path on the east side, so it would just be ditch. So that reduces the number of ditch enclosures which we need, because you don't have to worry about the path over there causing drainage problems. But it still does push everything away from the road, and it makes us redo the ditches, basically. The entire 2.25 miles, for the most part, the ditching has to be redone within the right-of-way for alternative 1 and 2, and that's why the impacts you saw between the third alternative and the first 2 alternatives were significantly higher than the third alternative, which is the next slide. You can see everything came in there. We're not widening the roadway, and so a lot of the ditches can remain pretty much where they are. We just clean them up and regrade as needed to make sure that there's any areas which might be holding water would drain properly, and like on Lakeshore Drive in the north-south direction to the swales and the creeks that run near it, and then on Mequon Road in the east-west direction. So that's showing, those are those slides, the cross-section there. This is pretty self-explanatory. The concept level costs that we did for the 3 alternatives, you can see those. It obviously is more expensive to put the widening and then the bike path in than to just reconstruct the road with no widening or bike path. And I'll kick it back to Cole.
All right, I'll quickly go through this. Just want to summarize the public engagement that we've done so far. Through our public engagement process, we've had 3 different meetings, engaged the public with a survey as well, trying to feel out some preference from the property owners. Really, our goal was just to educate everyone that we could talk to about what to expect, what we're considering, and how this project is proceeding. And then we collected all that feedback, and that's linked to your packet. All of the communication we had was available for you guys to look through. And we kind of came out of the public engagement phase with a couple different themes that we heard from a lot of people, kind of revolving around some things I'll go through here. A lot of them supported some improvement for walking and biking, felt there was a safety issue existing out there with some conflicts between bikers, pedestrians, vehicles. And then we also heard a lot about the concerns for the impacts, whether that's trees or other items in the right of way, and then costs. And then also we heard a lot about speed and concerns for that with vehicles. So looking through the support for improvements, I just highlighted a couple quotes from the survey we issued here that people submitted, but basically people that felt that they wanted improvements were really looking for some sort of safety improvement. They're looking for connection to Vermont Park, which is on this segment, as well as the Donges Bay Gorge and surrounding neighborhoods. It connects a lot of subdivisions in that area. And then several note increasing pedestrian bicycle use along this segment. This same conversation actually occurred in I think 1999 when this road was last repaved. They considered almost the same thing. So this has been a long, kind of an ongoing consideration for this area. And then, you know, in support of maybe not doing those bike ped improvements, big concerns about the tree impacts throughout the area. And we heard a lot about the neighborhood character and felt that some of that would be lost with some of the impacts of the project. Loss of privacy, again, all the impacts that we're proposing are in the right of way, but obviously when you're losing trees in front of your property, that might do the same thing as, you know, maybe a tree that's on your property. And we heard a lot of others say this was a large amount of money to spend on the project, just highlighting a couple of those concerns. And then kind of a neutral comment that kept coming up was concern about speeding on this segment. So there's the concern that because of the speeding, people want a improvement to help people that are choosing to use it for bike and ped, movement. But a lot of the people also said that they would be concerned if we widen the road that speeding would get worse. Just highlighting a couple of things we heard about that. And then moving into recommendations, as you heard from our Bikeway Commission members, they did recommend alternative 2 to proceed with, which is the 5-foot paved shoulder only. Like I said at the beginning, we're hoping to come out of this with a decision on how to move forward. If we can't, that's not to say there's not other roads to be repaved in the city if we have to push it back a year. Our tentative schedule was hoping to proceed with a decision tonight, move forward with finalizing, designing the plans and the bid package, and then move forward with construction, hopefully in spring. And that's all I have. I can turn it back to the mayor for some discussion, and I did get some forms dropped off by me as well.
Thanks, Cole. Why don't you bring the forms up and well, there's not that many. Okay. Why don't we hear public input? There are just 2 people signed up to speak at this point. Forgive me if I mispronounce this. Tom, is it Tagan? 902 West Mequon Road. Opposes and wishes to speak. So please come up to the podium, and time limit is 5 minutes, but.
Okay, I guess, I'm at 902 West Mequon Road, which is right next to the tracks, and I'm an avid, lifelong biker, pedestrian. I ride my bike more than I drive a car, and I'm against any changes at all to the road. I don't even think the road needs to be rebuilt. I think the money should be used to work towards lowering speed. I think that's the major problem for safety. And take that money and put it into the school zones and Mequon Road itself, heading west of the freeway. I can't even bike to the pool or the library or the city hall without having a target on my back. I mean, it's dangerous. So let's put our priorities there, like you guys mentioned. I appreciate that. And the specific reason I don't like widening Mequon Road in that area is if you put in 5-foot shoulder and then the 20-foot ditch, you're going to be right up against people's homes. There's 3 homes in a row there that you're going to be right up on the porches. And on top of that, I need to point out some gross errors in Smith's designs. I came to the PIM meetings and looked at the plans, and our property, they said all we have is, we don't have any specimen trees, they said. We don't have any gardens, they said. The plans just have a big blank for our property. And they said with alternative 2, 150 trees would be affected on all the roads. We have 75 trees on our property that would be affected by alternative 2. And some of these trees are old growth trees, like they go back over 100 years. They go back to, the house is over 100 years old, and they go back to before then. We have trees, 3-4 people to reach around. 3 of them blooming catalpa trees, and 3 people can't even reach their arms around the trunks. There's a huge willow tree that's probably 40, 50 feet tall. Same thing, you can't even reach around it. That's going to be gone. I think these trees are you know, it's a wonderful vista for the city, and those will be gone. We're going to lose grape arbors. We're going to lose iron fence. None of that's put on the plan. Other properties are listed. I don't know if other people were missed, but our trees are missed. So anyway, just to reiterate, I'd like to save the trees, so I'm speaking up for the trees and speaking up for the people's homes there that are going to be really impacted when the street is widened. And I feel like we need to keep taxes low and use the money where it's least safe, the school zones and the major portion of Mequon Road, which is the major dangerous thoroughfare. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remind everyone that Mequon Road is the responsibility of the state of Wisconsin once it gets to the other side of the road or other side of the track. So I share your concern about Mequon Road. It's just WisDOT is in charge of that one. I guess the other comment card we got was from Connie Tagan, same address, opposes but does not wish to speak. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak?
Well, that's my mom. She doesn't want to, she's at the owner of the property, and she's been there for years, and she doesn't want to speak anymore because she said I covered everything, so.
That's perfect. Yep, I just have to, I got a comment card. I have to read it into the record for the clerk, so. Does anyone else wish to speak? You raised your hand first, sir. Please come up, state your name and address for the record, and
Nicholas Laird, 320 East Circle Road, and that is, my property is actually immediately on Lakeshore Drive. Assuming the separate bike path option is off the table, I think it's just completely inappropriate, and it's to a lot of people. If we focus on the width of the expansion, managing our neighborhood concerns about the speed of traffic, the general, intensity of walking, like you have all said, on certain roads, the intensity of walking or biking on certain roads. We also want to be clear that considering the schools and the other places this money can be spent, given that Zedler was just widened by 4 feet on each side, the current plan for alternative 2 is to go 5 feet wide on Lakeshore. I would ask that we drill down on alternative 2 versus alternative 3, which would be no improvement, and decide where 5 feet came from. Why not 4 feet, which would be the same as Zedler? Why would Zedler have now 4 feet and Lakeshore Drive now need 5 feet? Perhaps that money could be spent better on other projects, given some improvement for the pedestrians, and also significant reduction in impact on vegetation and established fences and things like that. But just to reiterate, having a separate bike path doesn't really solve a problem anybody was asking, at least in the neighborhood, to solve. And also, it introduces a head-on issue for bicyclists. If bicyclists are actually on that 8-foot path, they're facing each other, as I understand it. That actually it creates a speed delta between oncoming bicyclists that doesn't exist right now. Right now, bicyclists on the road, on any road, are approximately 20 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour slower than the traffic in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Their delta between the cars that are behind them is that 20 miles an hour. If you have bicyclists doing 20 miles an hour at each other, that's a 40-mile-an-hour delta. So I think there are all kinds of problems created by creating an extra road bed, expenses, intervention in an area that doesn't need intervention. So let's focus on alternative 3 and alternative 2. And rather than just saying, okay, let's go with alternative 2, perhaps, let's also drill down on alternative 2 and decide what makes the most sense, budget and needs-based. Is it 4 feet? Is it 3 feet? Is it 5 feet? And then move forward with a reasonable plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The other gentleman, please, same thing, come up, state your name and address for the record, and have your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Matt Deloge. Bridget and I live at 103 East Mequon Road. We're on the south side of Mequon Road there. I'm in complete agreement with the last gentleman here from the standpoint of alternative number one is just something that is too much for the area that we bought into about 15 years ago. We live on a scenic roadway. Any given time, you've got runners, you've got old-fashioned cars, you've got motorcycles, et cetera, that use that roadway from that standpoint. And so looking at alternative 2 and 3 are the two areas that I would hope the full consideration be looked at from that standpoint, because I do believe the road needs to be improved. My wife and I try to walk around the roadway. You can't in its current condition. I've fallen and unfortunately, or fortunately not into traffic and things like that. So we need to have a shoulder that we can walk on from that standpoint. I'm also a biker, okay? From that standpoint, I see very little, benefit from a 5-foot versus a 4-foot, from that standpoint. Because if you look at the volume of bikes that go down that road at any given time, they don't follow the single file rule that signage is up there already for that standpoint. So I'd expect them to be there. But my point isn't against the bikers. My point is that it really gets to the safety of the overall usage of the road. And the concern that I have and some of my neighbors have and things like that, if you put a full 5-foot walkway on each side or shoulder, that it's already a speed area. And for those that know that area, west, going down east on Mequon Road to South Lakeshore, Dead Man's Corner, we've been very fortunate the last couple of years to finally not have some accidents there. The last thing I want to do is increase speeds and have people start having accidents in that corner again and losing people's lives and things like that. So I am concerned about having a full 5-foot shoulder on each side is going to give the perception of a larger roadway. It's going to tempt people for, going faster from that standpoint. And if the whole reason, and I've asked questions too, and Cole's been great, T's been great, we're trying to get an answer to why does it have to be 5 foot? Why not 3-foot or 4-foot? Match what's on Lakeshore already, match what's on Zedler from that standpoint. And if it's a speed limit thing, great, take it from 35 to 30, match what's already on Lakeshore North, and then we keep our scenic roadway. People can enjoy the view as they're going down there. It's safer for people that are walking their dogs, strollers, things like that. And yes, for the single bikers and things like that, we'll have some space that we won't be on the wrong side of the white line, so to speak, when cars are coming from that way. So I strongly ask and request the council to, not pursue alternative number one. And like the last gentleman said, take a harder look at alternative 2 and 3, both from a safety and a costing standpoint, because that's why at least Bridget and I, we bought into this area, from that standpoint, because it's the type of area we want to live in, but we understand improvements are a good thing. We've been asking for, a little bit of a shoulder there, so I look forward to that, but let's do it right and spend the right amount of money there and keep it safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yep, gentleman in back left corner, gray jacket. Nope, sorry. You're next.
Good evening, council and committee members. Patrick Dietering, 11109 North Lakeshore Drive. I reside and would be directly affected by any alternative chosen here. Just want to talk a little bit about the cost proposed, kind of working backwards, the repaving only, the estimate of 1.9, adding the 5-foot shoulders nearly doubles that to 3.9, and alternative 1, the extreme, adding shoulders and the path climbs to 4.7. I can't see how in a 60% plan set, not final design, that we can rely on those figures, in that adding the 8-foot and drainage potentially needing to be enclosed would only be an additional $800,000. I don't think there's enough data and information to support the numbers that have been presented today. Near the end of 24, I believe, in the right-of-way asset management capital account, $5.25 million for the 25 to 27 road projects, later increased to $6.95 million. for other capital improvements. Nearly that entire amount for roadway improvements in the city of Mequon would be consumed under Lakeshore Drive under Alternative 1. Why prioritize one corridor at the expense of every other roadway in Mequon? Based on the priority projects reviewed just before this, it's obvious there are improvements needed where safety is and should be the higher concern and priority. In the scenario of alternative 1 or 2, nearly 200 feet of mature trees and vegetation would be removed from the right-of-way of my property, affecting my front and backyards, along with every east side property along the corridor would experience similar loss. After experiencing, we've all experienced the emerald ash borer sweeping neighborhoods. We're finally recovering. Why remove healthy, mature trees? I can't believe this initiative would align with being designated as Tree City USA alongside Arbor Day. And have we considered the long-term maintenance cost of a project like this? Is snow removal contemplated? Is it going to be plowed? Who would pay for it? Whose budget would it fall under? If not, why are we going to have an unusable path for roughly 50% of the year? The alternatives come from the pedestrian and bike master plan, but even the naming sequence suggests alternative 1, kind of a predetermined direction, rather than an open evaluation. Why not a balanced option to mirror some of the other comments, considering just widening the shoulder or leaving the shoulder and adding a smaller bike path, 4 or 5 feet, I think would address some of the safety concerns we already have. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Come on up, sir.
I have a few comments to make on the 3 plans. Well, my name is Ron Heinritz, and I'm a member of the committee, Pedestrian and Bikeway Committee from Thiensville. I make a few comments. One of them is when the final plans came down, there were 3 alternatives, and I actually thought there should be 4, and a 4th alternative. And the 4th alternative would be possibly to keep the road in its same configuration and size, and with a separate bike and pedestrian path off the road itself. That would eliminate possibly moving the culverts and the ditches out. It would probably preserve some of the trees that are scheduled to be cut, and overall, you don't want to put pedestrians and bikers close to a roadway. Now, if you're driving a car or a pedestrian, when I'm driving, I don't like to see people walking on the side of the road, right next to the road. I would much sooner have them off the road and not have to worry about if there's going to be a false move or something, a tragic accident could happen. One of the things about widening the road, you're going to invite higher speeds, and that's a fact. And wherever there's trying to calm down traffic, there's bumpers put out in the roads and whatnot to slow the speeds down. So when you increase the size of that road, you're going to increase the speeds. It's going to happen. Another problem comes when you get to Mequon Road. The road turns there. And if you're going to have people walking on the side of the road around that turn, it's not going to work. And it's totally unsafe. Those are a few comments that I just want to put out for your consideration.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to speak? Okay, we got one more. Come on up, sir.
Hi, my name is David Oy. I live at 10020 North Sheridan Drive, part of the Ferry Chasm community. In the discussions on the details of the project, the one thing I kind of thought was important that was missing was dealing with water runoff issues that will be created. If you're adding 5 feet to both sides of the roadway, that's increasing the non-porous surface by around 30%. So you're going to have some additional runoff that has to be dealt with on those 2 side ditches and culverts. We've had some severe flooding with this heavy rain earlier this year in the community where we live in Ferry Chasm. And I guess the question is, with the water runoff, where is that going to be runoff to? I mean, is there enough surface area versus the culverts to be able to handle that additional load? So a lot of water runoff has to do with the speed of the runoff and where the downstream issues are. So just want to make sure those items are looked at as an evaluation along with the study. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would just like to add to my comment that this last gentleman in the red shirt, his comment about keeping the road as it is and adding just a pedestrian path to the side is a sensible option to consider. If it hasn't been tabled, it should.
Well, I don't think it was part of the study we have in front of us, so it's a bit difficult to comment on because we don't know the true impact of it. Okay, no more hands are going up. I'm going to bring this back to council. I'll just comment on a few things. There's some confusion about why 5 feet. I think Cole could answer this, but I think 5 feet is what is recommended if you're going to officially call it a bike and pedestrian facility. That's not to say that if it was improved to something less than that, it wouldn't be a massive improvement over what you have now. I mean, I maintain through the city's Adopt a Road program, that stretch, most of that stretch of road, there are some areas with 0 shoulder, there's some areas with only a foot. And yes, speeding is a huge problem, as I noted last Friday when I was out cleaning up. There were times I pulled out from a side street to move my car, and I swear I saw no cars in either direction, and I pulled out, and 2 seconds later, there's someone right on my tail. Like, where did that car come from? It's remarkable that people think that that's a freeway on-ramp, but some people treat it like one, and you're only laughing because it's true. It's not really funny, but that's the reality of the situation. Also, in one of the comments that was mentioned, about bikers not obeying the single file signs we have up, if you really talk to the police department, those aren't enforceable. They're a suggestion to try and get people to comply politely, but they're not really, they might not even be legal, but we leave them up anyway. So just a little piece of info. I've asked about that myself too. With that, why don't we get the obvious question out of the way? Straw poll, who's in favor of option 1? Is anyone considering the off-road bike path? Okay, world's easiest decision. I don't think anyone on council was actually considering the off-road bike path. So we're somewhere between options 2 and 3. And with that, I saw Alderman Gebhardt's hand raise up.
Thank you, Mayor. I figured I'd kick things off for the sake of the public in the room and those that are online. I represent District 8. District 8 to the north is Mequon Road. To the west, it's Port Washington Road, and then it covers obviously over to the lake and to the south boundaries of Mequon. So obviously this impacts my district. I've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of people in the course of many months. And so I want to make a couple of comments. I asked for just a little bit of leniency here. I want to make a couple of comments, and then I've got a couple of follow-up questions. And then I want to make, let you know how I'm thinking about it, okay? First of all, the presentations tonight, the 2 presentations really piggybacked off themselves in terms of getting us to where we are today. So I thought that was really helpful. Thank you to all those that took the time to put that together and come up and present today. I thought that was really helpful. I think based on some of the calls I've gotten, there is some hearsay out there. There's a lot of bouncing balls. There's a lot of variables. So trying to get that clarity in order for all of us to be thinking the same way and have alignment, I think is really important. So that was, I think, a great way to kick things off. I also want to go ahead and thank city staff for their hard work. So often that's undervalued or not recognized. And I want to say that they've done an amazing job running a transparent process. This is not easy for them to go ahead and juggle all the different variables. They've provided great opportunity for public input. You've been very responsive to the residents if they've asked for questions, or you've given your time to go ahead and meet with them multiple times as needed. And you've presented the information as it's become available, okay? And so it takes a while for a good recipe to go ahead and bake, and that's what gets us to where we are here today. And then the third piece, I want to give the shout out to all the residents that are here today and for being active in the process. I think a community works best when we're all working together. I've seen many email chains with a lot of people copied on it. There are insinuations that at times that people feel like we aren't working together and the message isn't being heard. I don't feel like that's an accurate representation. I feel like your voices are being heard. They come up in conversations off the record all the time in terms of myself with staff and just talking about where we're at and where we're going and how we could do a better job communicating with you. So thank you for your input. It is very valued, okay? A couple of clarifications, Cole, if you would, for me, which kind of lead into where I'm going to go with my closing remarks. But impact seems to be a big theme for everybody. And when I think about impacts, I define it two ways. I define it in impact from a financial perspective, and I define it from a natural environment, if you will, trees and what we've heard many people talk about here today, right? When you put together, and for those that may not have looked, I encourage you to go into the packet for tonight's agenda. On page 12, there's a great sheet of what all the impacts are that they have identified as of today, right? And keep in mind that that is not at full design. That is based upon estimates, right? And so my question to you in terms of impacts, right? Because we're making decisions off of data, and this is a critical data point, right? How would you classify those impacts in terms of trees? Let's start with that first. Do you think that's on the high end, and that once you get into the design, that we may find that that impact isn't going to be as great as what you're calling out here? Do you think it's more of a baseline? Or do you think it's worst case scenario and we could come into a surprise that it's going to impact a lot more vegetation than maybe what we originally estimated here on page 12?
Yeah, sure. And Brad could certainly speak to this if I miss anything, but yeah, this is certainly the concept exercise. Wanted to look at all of the potential impacts that we could possibly have with each of these alternatives, because as I shared with some residents I've spoken to, the last thing we want to do is say, hey, trees are in front of your property are going to be safe, and then we come back later and that's not the case. That's what we're trying to avoid. So I'd say the impacts and as far as trees go, for sure, are more on the conservative side, probably showing more tree impacts. And then as we move forward with whatever we decide tonight, we can of course true up some little things we can do in design and try to mitigate some impacts further.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, as you're going through the design process for whatever option we select, there is an opportunity to go ahead and value engineer this in certain areas that might be more effective to minimize that impact in terms of potentially the vegetation, and still be able to accomplish a wider road, drainage that a gentleman brought up concerns with, and making sure we've got the proper drainage. Those things can all be addressed, and potentially, again, we could minimize some of those impacts.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And would that be the same way in terms of budget? I know it's, that's a moving target in today's world, but is there a possibility that if we don't have as big of an impact in terms of what might need to be done with the prep work, if you will, that potentially that might also go ahead and impact the budget?
Yeah, kind of the same thinking. Again, if Brad's the one that put the cost estimate together, but yeah, as we move forward, there are certainly some things we can look at to try to reduce costs if that's a concern, which it seems like we've heard from a lot. So that's something we could definitely do once we move forward.
Okay.
If I could just add one, if I can just quick add one thing.
Please.
It is early enough in the stages of the development of these plans. Somebody mentioned 60%. It isn't even close to 60% at this point.
Okay.
It's concept, maybe 15%. It's laid out horizontally at this point. And so we included a contingency in these costs as well of 15%. So we looked at past projects that we've been working on and got some costs on some bids. That's what we do, bids that have come in on real work. And all the different line items of the tasks that need to be done, and we add that up, and then we added 15%. So I would say it's on the conservative side, the costs.
Okay, 15% contingency added into a cost that you went out and got budgeted.
Correct.
Right, fantastic, great. Thank you for making that point. I think that's helpful, because that's a critical data point as we think about impacts, right? The other piece that I want to just go ahead and clarify, I think the mayor did a good job on the 5-foot piece in terms of a formula that Grafe used at the time based upon volume and speed to come up with what that is. But the question that I have is why this road, right? Like, so why was the repaving of Lakeshore and Mequon? How does the city determine when to repave roads? And how does Lakeshore and Mequon fit into that, if you will?
Yeah, we go through all our roads every year. We rate them based on surface condition. From there, we generate a 5-year plan based on what we anticipate for budget and try to address our worst streets.
Okay, so this has been part of at least the discussion since I've been on the board for 3 years in terms of knowing that this was going to be coming out because of the rating system, right? And so I think that's an important piece too from where I sit as I'm going to make my final comments. And that is that the widening of the road isn't leading the decision to repave the road. The repaving of the road needed to be done regardless, okay? And so that's the short-term decision that we as the city made based upon a ranking system, right? But our job as we sit up here too, and I think everybody in the community can appreciate this and relate to it, we also have to look at the long term as well, right? And so if we're going to be repaving the road, is there an opportunity when we repave it to look at doing something maybe a little bit different, right? I think that, and that's the process that we're going through, which I think is really good due diligence, and I think we all probably can agree on that, right? So I want to be very clear because we've heard some other discussions tonight in terms of other areas that might need road work done. But this area specifically needed immediate road work done now. And so that is scheduled to be done. Now the question is, what does it look like, right? And that's what we're trying to give you some guidance on tonight. So I'm going to leave you with my conclusion, and I'm going to back it up with a couple of comments because I think it's really important. I agree with the widening of the road, okay? So I'm not going to use a number on what that footage is. Because again, we're in the early stages. Maybe you're going to come back as you work the design and find a better solution. But I agree with widening the road, right? And so a couple of reasons for that. Safety being the big concern. We heard a great presentation from the Pedestrian Way Commission and safety being the top concern. Whether we like it or not, people are going to be walking along that road regardless of what we do, right? Whether we like it or not, there is probably going to be some speeding at times, right? But if we can make it safer for us as residents to take advantage of the assets that we have in this community, like Vermont Park, like the dog park, I think that's in everybody's best interest long-term in terms of property values, safety, and everything else that comes with that, to certainly go ahead and try to go down that path of finding a way to go ahead and widen it with minimal impact, okay? The other piece that I'm going to say on why I support that, for those of you, many of you I'm sure sitting in the room live in District 8 or very close to that and have the great opportunity of going down Zedler. Zedler was recently repaved and it went to, as somebody mentioned earlier, to a 4-foot shoulder, which is bigger than what it was, okay? It looks fantastic, right? So when I have conversation with the neighbors, I see many people shaking their heads. They're like, you know what? Zedler looks great. You mean we can get a Zedler over on Lakeshore and Mequon Road? Like, that's a good comparison, right? Sometimes putting a visual with that helps people understand what it looks like and what it means, right? And so I'm going to say 2 things with Zedler. The feedback on that has been overwhelmingly positive, right? And for those that haven't driven down it, take a drive down it to get a comparison on it. Second piece that I would tell you, because I go down it multiple times a day, there's more people walking down that road than they did before, okay? Walking with, two abreast, a dog, whatever the case might be. My only conclusion to that is they feel safer walking on that road to connect between neighborhoods, maybe walk up to the dog park, than what they did before, right? So that's my conclusion. Leave it as my opinion. Maybe others disagree with that, but the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive on that. In terms of impacts, how do I justify the impacts in terms of potential loss of vegetation and the cost? I also want to point out that if you look in the packet, even if we kept the road the way it is, there's going to be impacts, right? Based upon what they have rated here, there's going to be 2 elm trees, 2 maple trees. There's going to be 59 driveways, 8 culverts, 57 ditch improvements, if we did nothing. So there's going to be some improvements and there's going to be some impact. The question is, how do we minimize that impact? And so why I'm voting to widen the road is because I've got confidence in Cole and team that they're going to go ahead and work in the best interest of all of us to find a solution when it comes back to us to vote on in sometime in 2026, to find a solution that's going to go ahead and hopefully minimize some of those impacts. And then we're able to go ahead and accomplish having a wider road and the benefits that come with that, right? I'm going to leave it at that, and thank you for the added time to just make a couple of points there. Thank you.
No worries, you're pretty close to 5 minutes anyway.
All right.
At the time
Good.
limit, we get a little more leeway.
All right, appreciate it.
Alderman Strelchak.
Well, I'm going to lead in and share that working with Alderman Gebhardt is awesome. I appreciate people that represent their people as passionately as you do, and the discussion is so well thought out and presented. I appreciate your statements there on behalf of the residents. It shows that, to the residents that are here tonight, you're here because you're concerned that we listen. I'm going to start in kind of with a line of questioning and then make a couple comments as well. I'll try to be a little more brief because it's not my district. Give other people a little more opportunity to talk. So discussion on the 5-foot versus 4-foot, I really want to, get my arms around that. I know that was recommended for another road, and we did back it down to 4 feet in other spaces. So can we describe that decision? And then also comment a little bit, the mayor can probably comment just as well because he just did, adopt a road over there, and he's seen, up close and personal for a mile. But, what is the current width from the stripe to the edge of the road? And then how wide is the shoulder kind of on average?
Sure. I'll start with that one so I don't forget. It's about existing street is 11 to 12 foot travel lanes, and then about a 1 to 3 foot paved shoulder based on where you are in the segment. Okay. Yeah. And then as far as the 5-foot recommendation, so Mayor kind of alluded to it before, but basically that's 5 feet is what's considered an actual bike and pedestrian improvement, not to say people aren't going to use whatever's there. But if you're doing a state project with state funding, that's the minimum to be considered that. The bikeway study, the master plan, went through each street and looked at volumes, traffic speeds. They're trying to make connections between parks, community areas, schools, things like that. And for all what they kind of deemed like the high travel corridors, or what they picture is being the most used to create sort of a network of these, they suggested improvements along those routes, and then kind of used that matrix based on federal and state guidance. And that's how they arrived at that 5 feet. So that's what we proceeded with to evaluate.
Are we feeling we're going to get funding for this?
That we don't have anything applied for funding for this project. We actually did apply for this a couple of years ago. It was not funded.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I've got on my screen, I got pulled up the average width of a Burley bike carrier, double wide for 2 kids, which is probably the widest one you get is 30 inches. Or 30 and a half inches. So somebody riding that down the road with 6 inches to spare on either side, 4 foot wide shoulder is definitely, very safe for a family to travel. You can, experienced riders could actually ride too wide, although I don't know that you'd get that very often, maybe staggered, side by side, but, and things like that. I had some questions on the costs. We're 1.9 million to do alternative 3, which is basically repaving existing road. And then we jump up exponentially to double the cost for, the improvement. So we're, that recommendation is a 5-foot wide plus how much gravel shoulder?
That one's 3 feet on each side. 3-foot gravel.
Total of 8 more feet on either side?
Well, there's a 1 to 3 foot existing paved, and then there's probably, I don't know, there's a couple feet of gravel shoulder out there right now, but yeah.
That seems, just feedback on my opinion, that seems excessive to an exponential degree. I got a lot of heads nodding yes in affirmation of my statement there. So let's review what that means. Again, I've talked with Kristen Lundeen. When it comes to road widening, you do need some gravel on the side so that road doesn't deteriorate and fall off. It's partially for the stability of the road, but it's also for additional safety. Are there discussions on lowering the speed limit on the road so that enforcement can be, mitigated? Because I know the other concern is people speeding. The mayor shared that, he pulled out and there were people that clearly were speeding without a radar gun, but, we want to make sure that it's enforceable.
Yeah, there's no contemplation with this project to lower the speed limit. That's not something we would typically recommend. It's not generally good practice to do that. It kind of creates a bunch of different issues. But I think that does play well into a conversation I think we've been planning on having for sort of a citywide, at least policy discussion on sort of traffic calming as in general, and looking at more, recommended practices when it comes to things like that.
My recommendation based on my experience here is that, we consider even unless we're a high candidate for funding for a roadway and we have exceptional resident interest in, that 5-foot wide walk and bike path. And I think it would benefit everybody in the room if you did choose to walk out there, or the families in your neighborhood that would go for walks. I mean, I know in my neighborhood, I don't have areas in which I can walk safely unless I'm in a cul-de-sac or a subdivision. And I would appreciate a little wider shoulder. I don't know that 5 foot is exactly where I'd want to see. And you didn't have an interstate in your backyard. I mean, I've lived here since the 70s, so I'm a long timer, even though my wife tells me I look young. I think she's just buttering me up. But I would recommend that we look at a 4-foot wide shoulder and a 1 to 2 foot wide gravel, just for the stability of the base, and look at that. I think what the residents really want to see here is somewhere that they can safely travel on bikes or in pedestrian. Walk 2 wide matches Zedler to tie in with what Alderman Gebhardt shared. And then the gravel shoulder on the side. I'm also going to highlight one other concern. If you do have speeding and you do have a left turn and you do have that wide of a shoulder, you're going to have a tendency for vehicles to really pass on the right where there really isn't a right to pass. A, it's an illegal move. B, it just creates enough visible space to make it even exceptionally more unsafe. So I have concerns in that space, and you don't necessarily see the person that's walking their kid ahead of a truck that's turning left into a resident, or an Amazon truck with delivery or something like that. So, let's take a moment, of concern. Any other thoughts on just kind of what I've shared? I mean, is that feasible? Can we get the cost down? Like, I kind of feel like that should be kind of at or around the $3 million amount based on what I've seen. My recommendations.
I can comment on the consideration for the 4 foot and the reduction of the gravel shoulders. We had a couple questions about that as well. Reducing the, if you're widening the road really to any degree, you're probably already kicking out those ditches, and that's really where the bulk of the cost is coming from in alternative 2. The pavement added between 4 foot and 5 foot is really not that much of a cost when you consider it in the compared to a $4 million project. It's probably tens of thousands of dollars. We're not talking hundreds for for something like that. But you mentioned the gravel shoulder. I think that's something we can definitely, that's an easy thing that we could look to reduce during design. And that would both help us with impacts, bringing like the boundary of the project at the very edge. You know, if you got a tree that's within the project limits by a foot and you bring down your gravel shoulder, I mean, you can probably do some pretty impactful things by reducing that.
Yeah, and that ditch width isn't necessarily written in stone either. I'm going to highlight, you know, when we looked at Green Bay Road as well as Hawthorne, you know, those were two roads that were considered, you know, more rural. They had that character that, you know, I see all the residents nodding that they want to maintain. You know, we don't need an 8-foot wide ditch for water drainage because that's the new standard if 4-foot wide one is going to continue to work. You know, again, getting your whole front yard dug up, I mean, there's going to be some impact on widening it anyway. You want to minimize what that is. And, you know, let's be respectfully creative but accurate with the assessment to further address the water runoff issues here. That would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Alderman Meyer.
Thank you for all the information and that. One of the problems with being down the list when you're making comments is that most of the comments have already been made that you wish to make. So I'll make mine really brief. But I'm assuming that, you know, on the paved shoulders alternate 2, is that one of the major costs is that you're moving culverts for that.
Right, there will be some culvert replacements, yes.
And it doesn't, if we go to the 4-foot instead of the 5-foot, it doesn't reduce that amount of culvert that we have to move?
Minimally, reducing you're talking the 5-foot shoulders down to a 4-foot.
Yeah.
It might have some minor impacts to that, but when you're pushing something.
No matter what you do, whether it's 4 or 5, that you're going to do the same type of stuff in the ditching or the culverts that you would have done.
The same type of stuff, but I mean, 1 foot would probably minimize some impacts, but a 5-foot shoulder widening to a 4-foot has pretty minimal impacts on what you're doing in the right of way.
Yeah, my other question was, and briefly, is that, you know, making the turn Lakeshore and going towards Mequon Road, I mean, doing Mequon Road over to the freeway. So now we're encouraging biking to go in that direction and in that very dangerous intersection that we have over there. Maybe it's more of a question for the Bikeway Committee, but is that something really smart we should be doing, encouraging biking going into that direction and that intersection? I think that's a very dangerous intersection that we have, and there's really nothing for biking to get through that, let alone, you know, pedestrians to do a lot of this stuff inside that corner. So I know there's a lot of people who want to utilize Lakeshore Drive to get to Vermont Park. There's residents around over there and want to do that, you know, and some people want to bike through to that area over there. But, you know, I think directing to that intersection is kind of ill-advised to do that.
Sorry for interrupting, but I think the unfortunate reality is there's a surprising number of people doing it today. I see all sorts of people trying to get from the east side of the tracks under the freeway over to Port Washington Road so they can go up and down the sidewalks. Sometimes even children on bicycles unaccompanied by adults, which kind of blows my mind, but I see it. So it's happening.
I think maybe one of the things to direct more people through Dodges Bay, I think, to get over to the Port Washington Road area over there is more of an appropriate area.
Most of these people live off of
push them
San
into
Marino, and
that
there's no way
intersection.
they're going to backtrack
Yeah.
2 miles to the south and then go a mile back to the north. It's that's just the reality of where people are and where they want to get. So remind us again to center us, because we've had some free-ranging conversations. We're looking to get to one option or another and probably some guidance on some specifics, so it's not totally free rein on your end, because the intent is to try to get this to a point where it can be bid in the February timeframe, and that's rapidly approaching. And if we end up missing it, we end up missing it. But we as a council have to come to some sort of consensus on option 2, option 3, and if option 2, to what degree if you're not in favor of 5, what's some rough guidance for staff to go forth and have this redrawn and so it can be sent out for bid, because it can't go out for bid with question marks, or it'll probably cost too much because there's question marks. And
Yeah, and just
correct?
yeah,
In general
and just to be clear too, the hope is to proceed with the reason we want to proceed with 1 is, we're going to go through this time. Brad's going to go through spending time on the design. We're going to put the bid package together, and then ultimately it's going to come back to this body to approve the construction for. So we just don't want to get to that point, have a disagreement at that point, and then have to go back and redo a whole lot of work that has already been done.
Correct. If we get to that point where then we're probably foregoing any road improvements for 2026, because we'll have put our eggs in this basket. And this has been on the improvement plan, reconstructing this road has been on the plan. I think even some of our budgeting numbers were, for when we planned the road program, have been centered around planning to do this project in the next 2 years. So it's not like it hasn't been planned. And I think I've heard I'll say a little bit of my piece now. I've heard for as long as I've been in Mequon, which is 21 plus years now, of people desiring some sort of improvement to the side of the road in this area for bikes and pedestrians. And I've only heard it more since I've moved to that side of the freeway. There's a lot of homes that have been built up in that area over the past roughly 30 years since the road was last constructed. And my fear is if we do nothing now, you'll wait another 30, 35 years before you get the next chance. So I'm leaning towards something in option 2. I'm open to discussing road width. I would love to minimize the impact and keep the cost under control as possible. So if we can get to something less than 5 and there's momentum around that, certainly reducing the shoulder width and controlling the amount of gravel. Maybe you can pull it in 2-3 feet on each side, and you can shrink the footprint and make it even less impactful than it is now. Certainly, I think we've already decided option 1's off the table. But I think to reconstruct this road and make no improvements to the shoulders, it would be a mistake that would take another 30 or 40 years to rectify. Alderwoman Tlacco.
Okay, so I really like Alderman Gebhardt's logical thinking. I think that's really important. So we know that this road is up and that we're going to be doing something to it. It's in our plan. The city does an extremely well job in trying to maintain all of our roads. We know this is coming up and we're already going to be spending X amount of dollars for it. To do nothing further to improve it, I think would be silly, because we're already sticking this money in, and it's like a cost savings when you kind of do 2 things at the same time, then say, hey, let's just like resurface it, and then you want to come back 5 years later and then make the improvement. Well, it's cost savings within that. So I think that alternative 2 is the most logical path forward, because we do have safety concerns. I've been born and raised in Mequon. I'm very versed in the lakeshore traffic, bike path stuff. It's been going on forever in the city, and that we should address it somehow. But I also want to be respectful of the residents that choose to live on the east side, that I want to respect their property. It is their property, and I get that we have an easement, but that doesn't just give us like a blanket right to say, well, because it's in our easement, we can do whatever. So I really appreciate all the residents coming out and talking with us. I think the most logical path forward at this point would be to mirror what we did on Zedler Lane. And I don't see that alternative here, because it's the 5 foot instead of the 4 foot. And I think that's something that the council should see. I think it gives us continuity. I think that's probably the best path forward. And it's going to be a huge improvement. And I think it's going to infringe on our residents in the least way and have the least impact overall, especially with the expertise that I trust in our city staff with their designing and engineering skills. That's going to get everyone what they would like to see happen, and we're all going to be in this together, working towards the same thing. So I'd like to see that alternative move forward. Thank you.
Alderman Hancher.
So earlier you said about the difference between the 5-foot width versus the 4-foot width. So how much of a money savings is it, would it be between 5 feet to 4 foot? I mean, because I guess I'm looking at this, long term, right? It's not just about now, but what about it in the future? Because that's really what you have to look at, is what's going to be the most impactful for the future that will sustain this road. And if we're talking a minimal amount of money and that you have the 5 foot, and it's not that much more than the 4 foot, I would be more inclined to go with the 5 foot. But
Yeah, I think it was for the additional foot along the entire length, or the reduction would save maybe 50 to 70,000, something like that.
see, I look at that. I look at that and I'm thinking, okay, we're talking about a road that's going to be sustained for 30 years. And so just by where I live, we have a bike paths, and I live in Huntington Park, and we have bike paths. Our roads are not wide enough to have people going. And the bike paths are a good width, and that you see there's enough room for people to come both ways. So that's why I'm looking forward to having it wider, because I think it just makes it a little more easier for people to go back and forth.
Well, I think the desire to minimize the impact of the cross section isn't, some of it's cost, don't get me wrong, but I think it's more minimizing impact to the area for the residents. We're certainly want to make improvements. I think we want to be as sensitive as we can be while we do that too. If it's, what was it? It's 1 to 3 feet now with maybe a foot or two of shoulder. So you got anywhere from 2 to 5 feet. If you have a 5-foot shoulder and 3 foot of gravel, well, that's 8 feet, and it's 3 feet. It's 3 feet more. It might be more, depending on where you're at. So, I think that's where the discussion is going, more for those considerations rather than cost. I mean, certainly if you're gonna widen it at all, there's a lot of mobilization and just moving of earth and stuff that's going to happen, whether it's 4 or 5. It's most of this cost is there because you got staff.
I'm just responding to some of the other people talking about reducing the cost, and if it's not that much of a difference, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, I think it's more for minimizing impact where we can. Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. I said several of my comments in the prior subject. I had major sticker shock when this project came out, and I think just so the public knows, all of us have been listening to you and reading and learning about bike paths and standards and trying to come to the right decision here. Unlike prior studies we've done, I feel like in the past they've asked us, like we never would have considered this side path is what my issue is here. So we spent quite a bit of money to have one of the concepts. I get that it was in the pedestrian plan, but we don't even have like a concept to vote on tonight or to look at for the 4-foot plan or costs. We caused so much trepidation from the neighbors. Why not just talk to council to begin with? We could have said we never would have considered a $6 million project. Like, no way, ever. And why not talk to us? We do that with other studies, is my point. And for whatever reason with this study, it didn't happen. And here we are being asked to vote so that we can stay on track. And I don't feel like we have all the options. I definitely am in favor of some form of option 2. So I think we need to proceed for sure with option 2, some variation of it. I don't believe that, I don't want to vote tonight based on this figure that, going to 4 feet, just keeping 5 feet is only going to save $80,000. I just don't believe that. I won't until we're further along. So I'd rather have one more month for you to come back with some more refined figures and confidence. I'd like to know how many trees we would save by going from 5 feet to 4 feet. That's an interesting data point. I love Alderman Strelchek's idea of the narrower gravel. Let's do that. Let's go very deep on the ditches. Who cares? Unless someone falls in. But yeah, we don't need wide ditches. Who cares? So I think there's just more designing before it got here. I would like a $3 million project. I don't know where you got that number from, but that was the number in my head. And I don't see why it can't get there. I'd like more work to be done. And again, I would just like, I understand your point that the reason why we're talking about this tonight is because of the timing of the road program. I do think that that is not the right policy for council to be taking. I think safety of children should be the #1 policy, and who cares about when the roads are to be replaced, whatever. Thanks. So that logic bothers me. I don't understand why there's not grants available. Thanks for asking that. For the range line and Donges Bay Path, I feel like 80% of our project would be paid for. So in here, it's nothing. So I just, a little frustrated, but we're all on the same team. We're trying to get to a decision. I hope we don't vote on this tonight, other than maybe a straw poll saying, yeah, we're all in on #2. And then why don't we have the consultant and staff just do a little more homework and vote next month? I think we're still on the right path. So I'd rather not vote. I'm uncomfortable with it. Thank you.
I agree with Alderman Parrish on basically what you said. I mean, I think there's consensus on 2, but I'd really like to see the impact, both financial and trees and others, versus 4 and 5 feet.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Somehow we'll have to formulate that into some sort of motion, or maybe we don't need a motion. Straw poll time. Who's in favor of some form of option 2, but would like to nibble around the edges of the details? Okay, so we've got, good, we can agree on something. We just don't know what the something is yet. Based off the feedback I've gotten on Zedler Lane, I think 4 feet would be an admirable target. Sounds like we're going to give staff some homework in some way. I don't even know if you can accomplish getting that done by next month. The answer is probably no. We can talk about what the, and I'll jump on one point. This council, for better or worse, has had a long-standing practice of considering bike and pedestrian improvements when we do the road program, because it is the most economical way to implement them. So I'm sensing there's some angst that we don't like that process, but that is why we do it, because we have limited funds. It's the most efficient way to execute them. We've done it successfully on other roadways when we've reconstructed them. So for better or worse, that's the policy we've adopted and we've been operating under for probably at least the last 10 years, probably longer. So to say it's not good is a little disingenuous. We've been living it ourselves for that length of time, and that has consequences. Doing it other ways has consequences. It costs more money. So I think this isn't an inappropriate time to consider this. It's when the road is contemplated to be reconstructed. It is entirely appropriate to take this up now. I get I'm going to keep talking. If we would have had a different feedback mechanism earlier, maybe it could have turned out differently. That's a fair point. But we do that because we're trying to be the best stewards of taxpayer dollars possible. And if we just pick off projects around the edges and don't do it in a coordinated fashion, it is going to cost more over time. But I don't disagree with looking at any safety-related item based on its merits, nonetheless. We can do that at any time. So I think we have to come forward with some sort of general consensus to give staff a hope of coming back with a answer that's acceptable later. Someone else raised their hand
Feel
first,
free,
so I'm
I'm
not
just
going to
getting
take
in
them out
line.
of turn. But I sense a general consensus on 4 feet versus 5, and narrowing up the gravel on the side where, I don't know what's feasible to take that down to 1 foot everywhere, or 1 foot
we can
where
look at
it's tight, and maybe 2 feet where there's no ability to impact. We've just taken 2 to 3 feet on each side, or 6 feet out of this whole thing, which once you get into the earth moving and tighten up the ditches a little bit, that may have a chance to take the cost down. I will point out, though, with the 15% contingency, option 2 is closer to 3.3. So it's not that far off when you add in the contingency, because you're at an early stage in your estimating. It could come true, but there's a lot of just percentages added on top of percentages. And I think these are intended to be budgetary high-end estimates, so we don't come up short, because we've only got so much money left in our 3-year road borrowing. And we'd certainly like to tuck it all within the remaining funds, which is probably closer to 3.5 and not 4. So I think that's where we're headed anyway. Okay, now go ahead, Alderman Parrish.
It's a tough subject, Mayor, so I know this is your neighborhood too, and you've been listening to all your residents, so I agree with everything you just said, except for just one point, in that I don't agree that the timing of the road program is when we should choose projects. And so my suggestion would be that perhaps that should be a future policy item, that we could flesh that out further. Because I get that it's good practice, but you made a statement that that's our policy, and I hope that's not our policy.
Well, that it's our de facto policy, because that's how we've behaved for more than a decade.
So my suggestion is maybe we could discuss it some more.
Well, I certainly think we can reserve time for that, but I think we could do that at any time too. This is how we've conducted ourselves as a body, and I get it late in the game, we're having different thoughts about how we do things, but we're not here now because of that we're here now because of the way we've been behaving and acting for 10 years. If we want to change that, we probably could have had a different discussion a year ago if someone wanted to bring it forward, but that's water under the bridge or down the culvert. Alderman Strelchak.
So you guys have covered most of what I was looking to say. I did want to baseline, my statement to the Bike Commission, and then my frustration with when we discuss the width of the bike lanes comes up when we're discussing each road project. My statement was meant to sound more like a baseline of, I really wish there was a city standard that we could choose a 3 to 4 foot wide bike lane on all roadways unless there was reason to consider otherwise, or came up with a series of standards that would support the Bike and Pedestrian Committee from a council standpoint. And we wouldn't debate whether or not we add a bike lane when we have space to do it and not really a ton of funding like we did. I think we made some compromises on Donges Bay Road. That was one of the things where I don't think that I got, the vote to go in the favor of where I was hoping to go. But I did get something. This one coming back with 5 feet, the neighborhood angst on, the width of that and the frustration of what this might look like to their yards. Just kind of setting some kind of general policy guidelines to get staff started when entertaining this, so that it's, council direction coming forward. It would be a really good baseline. For me, what the numbers of what I would want to see and how I want to analyze this is exactly as you've stated, Mayor. 4 foot wide paved shoulder for bikes, because I think this is a more pedestrian and bicycle centric, neighborhood use centric area, in which I think there's significant benefit in that. The narrowing of that gravel shoulder where possible. The narrowing and the deepening of ditches were reasonable, and some discussion from our consultant and city staff on, really where some opportunities are to save some of the resident trees. We want to, take as few as possible with any project. And then some creative ways in which we can maybe save a little on this project and still have a quality project that accomplishes all of our goals. For me, the reason I want to hire a consultant on these things is to, I know what I know. I know I can throw a 5-foot shoulder on there. I know I can throw a separate lane on there, but what are my opportunities as a city council member to really get creative and do something that benefits, the residents as well as save some money? And I'm just, as a betting man, throwing out a number at 3.2 to 3 million is where this will come in after we do that. So it's on the record, and we can, buy pizza, and if we're right or wrong later on, or lower.
All right, so do you have enough general guidance to go forward and do something? I think the unfortunate consequence is that is going to mean that this road misses for next year's construction season.
We'll go back and talk if we can do that, and we'll coordinate with Will
Okay.
to see if we can bring it back. But
Okay, so we're going to make a valiant attempt to not let that happen. I think in parallel, we should prepare a list of what we might do otherwise.
I think it seems like
Based off our other roads in our CIP plan.
It seems like either you were between, evaluating the 5 versus 4, or just proceeding with the 4.
I think the lion's share of the consensus was to aim for 4 with reduced gravel shoulders.
Okay.
And to try and tighten it all up to minimize impact. So we get I've gotten nothing but praise for how Zedler looks, and Zedler's 4 feet. It's far more functional than it used to be. Sometimes it's, that's a litmus test, right? You've gotten feedback. It's not 5 feet. It wouldn't qualify for a state grant. We did qualify for a state grant on this road a couple years ago and were shot down. So who knows what our likelihood of getting that funding on any given project? It's really hard to say. It's very, very variable. So you certainly wouldn't plan around getting it. It's kind of a bonus if you do.
Okay. We'll proceed with the 4 foot. We can true up. We can reduce the gravel shoulders. That's easy. Moving forward with less than 5 feet will probably not allow us to submit any applications for like a bike pedestrian improvement, since that 5 foot is the minimum. But like we said, it'll likely reduce impacts. It'll save some costs. So we can proceed with that if that's the consensus.
It sounds like we've applied and got shot down already once. I can assume we're likely to again. I could be wrong, though. Does anyone's opinion change if we can get state funding?
Mayor, if we can get state funding and we can have 2 bid options, we can bid them both and just pick a winner.
You wouldn't know for.
Oh, you wouldn't know in time?
You wouldn't know for months. Maybe a year. If the state's going to give you any money.
Yeah.
Then you're on their time frame, not ours. So
great.
That's the complicating factor too with chasing that. You're better off having a little flexibility on your schedule if you're going to go pursue those opportunities.
You and Alderman Gebhardt live there, right? I lean on you for your recommendation, but I think the direction that you're going with that 4 foot and narrower everything else is the direction that backs the residents and the overall use. So I think you're on
I'm just
track.
trying to gauge where we have consensus.
I'd maybe just do a straw poll of the audience with raise of hands, no comments, like which one do you like? And I think you're going to hear what they say, and then I think you're going to hear what we say, and your answer is going to be pretty clear on what we send staff back asking them for.
I think we've
unconventional. I'm sorry.
I think we've done that work here at the council as far as giving direction. Director Lundin is.
That's all I was going to request was if we could get to consensus. Just a reminder that at the time of bidding would really be the opportunity to say yes or no to the project cost. So I was just going to ask that maybe for consideration of moving forward with a design at a consensus cross section so that we can include it in the 2026 road program and not miss the opportunity to do so, to bring a revised cost estimate back next month.
Because you will have if we give you direction on what to go draw, it'll be drawn and it'll get priced that way.
Correct.
My only question is on the off chance it doesn't get voted for, do we just do no major road reconstruction next year and roll it all forward, or do we have a?
We can work through the bidding documents to ensure that it is bid, and there is, if this is the consensus and direction of the Common Council, that we can either bid them concurrently but separately, so that the Lakeshore Road could be rejected on its own, on its merits, but the timing are to be bid together so that the contractors would be aware of the intent to do all of it. Or we could consider structuring it with a total base bid and alternates. That doesn't always get us as favorable pricing, but if we're able to move forward with design, we can structure the bid such that the council would have the option to reject this project on its own.
Okay, I just wanted to tease that out.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, just every decision has a consequence and an impact. I just wanted to talk through the totality of that.
And otherwise, it just means it goes into the 2027 and 2028 projects.
Correct. Okay. Is everyone good with that, or is everyone said their piece? Well, we just gave staff direction to go draw up plans at 4 foot with minimized gravel and tightened up ditches, and basically sharpening the pencil to get us functional, if not ideal, bike and pedestrian improvements, while minimizing to the maximum extent possible the impact of the cross section to alleviate, to try and further reduce trees removed, other structures that are in our right of way, things like that. I think that's where we're at. It's not a final decision. It's more direction. But we'll go design it, and we'll see what the cost is, and we'll see it in the new year.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'm okay with that. I mean, we're working with the commission. I would have preferred the 5, but I'm happy to compromise with the 4. But I do think the commission does need some guidelines. If we're doing 4 on Lakeshore, then we have to figure out what we're doing for the rest of the city. Can you do 5? Can you do 4? We need some direction on that, because if it's just going to be 4, for the rest of the city, I think the commission needs to hear that loud and clear. So I'm okay with that direction, but I do, support the commission's recommendation.
That would move closer to Alderman Strelchuk's comment on having some sort of policy. I think that the trouble with that is not every project's the same. I think if there weren't as many impacts, 5 feet isn't a big deal. And then if you create a policy that charts things out, you're sort of hamstringing future councils to even have a decision, and future councils might object to that. So that could be changed at any time. So that's the only pitfall there.
And that all is in the plan. I mean, it both very specifically lists locations, and to Cole's earlier point, the designation based on average daily traffic, speed, and everything else. Your study does exactly that.
Yeah, so we're sort of doing it already. We're just deviating a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Move forward.
Do we need any other formal action, or is that enough direction?
It is from our perspective, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll see what comes out of it. Appreciate your continued effort. All right. We are at the end of the committee of the whole meeting, just a little later than normal. Is there a motion to adjourn? We'll skip the planning calendar for now.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned, and will immediately